Have you ever noticed that the hardest person to protect is usually yourself? Or perhaps you have felt that strange, quiet exhaustion that comes from agreeing to things you never wanted to do just to avoid a conflict. What if the peace you are desperately trying to keep around you is the very thing destroying the peace within you? If you have ever felt invisible, emotionally drained, or terrified of being seen as a burden, this is for you. So many of us have been taught a silent rule from a young age. Do not cause trouble. Do not take up too much space. We learn to swallow our true feelings, hide our struggles, and bury our natural responses because we are terrified of one word: difficult. We would rather sit quietly in our own discomfort than risk making someone else uncomfortable. So we smile, we nod, we apologize when we have done nothing wrong. We become masters at reading the room, making sure everyone else is happy, calm, and accommodated. But in doing so, we slowly abandon ourselves. Buddhist wisdom teaches us about the nature of true peace. In Buddhist thought, peace is not merely the absence of external noise, nor is it the act of forcing the world into a state of artificial calm. Real peace requires harmony between what is within and what is without. When you silence your truth to placate another, you are creating a deep internal fracture. You are clinging to the illusion that you can control someone else's reaction by managing your own behavior. This is a subtle, dangerous form of attachment. It is an attachment to approval, an attachment to an image of being good, and an attachment to a false harmony. And as with all attachments, it inevitably brings suffering. Imagine a river flowing toward the ocean. If you build a heavy stone dam to stop the water from spilling over its banks and disturbing the land nearby, the area around the river remains dry and quiet. But behind the dam, the pressure builds. The water does not disappear just because it is contained. It rises, it grows heavy, it pushes relentlessly against the stone. Eventually, the dam will crack. Your unexpressed truths, your swallowed needs, and your silent frustrations are exactly like that water. You think you are keeping the peace, but you are only building a dam, and the sheer weight of holding it all back is slowly crushing you. Think about your own life. Think about the workplace where you take on extra hours because you fear being seen as uncooperative. Think about the relationship where you stay quiet about your hurt feelings because you do not want to ruin the evening. Think about the family gatherings where you let painful comments slide just to avoid a scene. You are paying for their comfort with your own energy. Ask yourself this: what are you afraid will happen if you finally let the water flow? What are you truly holding on to when you hold your tongue? Is this silence bringing you true peace, or is it merely feeding your fear? Pause. Breathe. The next time you feel the urge to swallow your words to keep someone else comfortable, just observe that urge. Notice the fear rising in your chest. Let the feeling rise without making it your identity. You do not have to fight it, but you also do not have to obey it. You can simply watch it pass without acting on it. Stop trying to force the door shut on your own existence, just to keep the room quiet. Because peace is not a performance you put on for others. It is something you make space for within yourself. But letting go of this deeply ingrained habit requires us to look closely at the lie we have been told about what makes a person good. And this is where the next truth begins. Here is a truth that few people want to face. Being good is not the same as being kind, and being agreeable is not the same as being honest. From a very young age, we are often taught a dangerous equation. We learn to equate being a good person with being a compliant person. We are conditioned to believe that a good person always sacrifices, never complains, and constantly prioritizes the needs of others above their own. If someone crosses a boundary, the good person is expected to forgive instantly and quietly. If we feel anger or resentment, we suppress it immediately, because we are told that good people do not feel those things. We wear this idea of goodness like a mask, trying to be the perfect friend, the perfect partner, the perfect employee. But eventually, the mask begins to suffocate. We end up living a quiet lie, smiling through our exhaustion and calling it a virtue. Buddhist wisdom teaches us a very different path. It points us toward the profound importance of deep authenticity and seeing things exactly as they are. In Buddhist thought, truthfulness is a pillar of a conscious life. But this does not just mean refusing to lie to others. It means refusing to lie to yourself. When you pretend you are fine when you are actually breaking, you are living out of alignment with reality. You are rejecting the truth of the present moment. Denying your own pain simply to maintain an illusion of a perfect, peaceful relationship is a form of delusion. Buddhism reminds us that true compassion is never incomplete. It must always include compassion for yourself. And true honesty requires you to acknowledge your own limits, your own exhaustion, and your own humanity. Imagine a beautiful, strong tree standing in the middle of a dense forest. To be a good tree, it decides that it must never cast a shadow on the smaller plants growing below. So, it bends its branches. It twists its massive trunk. It stops reaching upward toward the sun so that others may have more light. For a short time, the smaller plants might thrive, but eventually, the great tree begins to wither. It loses its strength, its leaves dry up, and its roots weaken. In trying to be perfectly accommodating to everything around it, the tree forgot its own nature. It forgot that it too requires sunlight to survive. We shrink ourselves in relationships so our partner does not feel insecure. We absorb unfair criticism at work because we want to be seen as the ultimate team player. We let family members overstep our boundaries because we want to be the glue that holds everyone together. We twist our branches and hide our shadows, convinced that this constant self-abandonment makes us deeply loving. But love without honesty is just a performance. Ask yourself, who are you truly protecting when you choose to hide your genuine feelings? Are you actually nurturing a healthy, honest connection? Or are you just desperately trying to manage someone else's perception of you? What would happen if you stood tall and let your shadow fall naturally where it belongs? Pause. Breathe. The next time you are tempted to say, "It is fine," when it is profoundly not fine, catch the lie in your throat. You do not need to unleash a storm of anger, but you can simply choose not to endorse the illusion. Let the discomfort exist. Allow yourself to be real instead of just agreeable, because true peace can never be built on a foundation of self-deception. It requires the courage to be seen exactly as you are, even if that means being misunderstood by those who prefer the mask. But when we first try to take off that mask, we are often met with a heavy, familiar feeling that pulls us right back into silence. And this is where the next truth begins. What if the guilt you feel when you finally stand up for yourself is not a sign that you did something wrong, but a sign that you are finally doing something right? Here is a truth that can be very difficult to accept. Guilt is often a liar. For many of us, guilt has become a false moral compass. We have been conditioned to believe that if we feel guilty, we must have committed a wrong. When we finally say no to a demand, when we take a day to rest, or when we gently step away from a one-sided relationship, a heavy wave of guilt rushes in. We feel selfish. We feel cold. We think to ourselves, if I feel this bad, I must have made a terrible mistake. We confuse the temporary discomfort of breaking an old, unhealthy habit with the genuine pain of causing harm. We let guilt steer our decisions, blindly trusting it as a spiritual guide. Buddhist wisdom teaches us to look very closely at the nature of our emotions, rather than blindly following them. In Buddhist thought, true morality is rooted in clarity, deep compassion, and the intention to cause no harm. But the guilt you feel when you protect your own peace is not true remorse. It is merely an attachment. It is an attachment to old conditioning, an attachment to the expectations of others, and an attachment to an outdated version of yourself. Buddhism reminds us that thoughts and feelings are not always truth-tellers. Guilt is often just an echo of the past. It is not the voice of wisdom. Imagine you are walking through a dense, beautiful forest, holding an old, rusted compass. For your entire life, this compass has been programmed by other people. It was calibrated to keep you walking in small, safe circles, never venturing too far, never taking up too much space. One day, you see a path leading up toward a clear, bright mountain. You take a step onto this new path. Immediately, the needle on the rusted compass begins to spin wildly. It tells you that you are lost. It tells you that you are going the wrong way. It insists that you must turn back to the familiar circle. But you are not lost. You are simply moving in a direction that the old compass was never built to understand. This is exactly what happens in your life when you begin to change. You finally tell a demanding friend that you cannot solve their problems today. You leave a holiday gathering early because you are emotionally exhausted. You choose to spend a quiet evening alone instead of attending an event you dread. And immediately, your internal compass starts spinning. The guilt screams that you are being a bad friend, a cold family member, a selfish person. You feel the intense pressure to turn back, to apologize, to abandon the mountain and return to the small circle of their expectations. Ask yourself, is this guilt truly coming from a place of causing harm, or is it coming from the unfamiliar, frightening feeling of freedom? Are you genuinely hurting someone, or are you just breaking the unwritten rule that you must always be available to absorb their burdens? Pause. Breathe. The next time the needle of guilt begins to spin, do not rush to fix it. Do not immediately send the apologetic text. Observe the feeling without following it. Let the guilt rise like a cloud drifting across the sky. You do not have to obey the compass. You can simply acknowledge its spinning and keep walking forward, because true peace is not found by constantly obeying the fears and demands of the past. It is found by learning to tolerate the discomfort of growth. But taking those steps often awakens our deepest, oldest fear. And this is where the next truth begins. 4. The deep fear of being seen as difficult. What if the word you are most terrified of is actually the exact boundary you need to set? Here is the truth. We shape our entire lives around avoiding a single accusation. We are terrified that if we speak up, if we say no, if we ask for what we actually need, someone will look at us and decide we are too much trouble. We equate being easygoing with being lovable. We think that if we are perfectly accommodating, if we never raise an objection, we will never be left alone. We stay silent in relationships. We say, whatever you want, when we actually have a preference. We accept poor treatment because we secretly believe that asking for respect makes us a burden. We are not choosing silence out of peace. We are choosing silence out of a deep fear of rejection. Buddhist wisdom teaches that much of our suffering arises from clinging to an illusion of control over how others perceive us. In Buddhist thought, the ego desperately wants to maintain a specific, safe image, the image of the perfect friend, the flawless partner, the agreeable worker. But this is an endless trap. You can never truly control another person's mind or their judgments. When you attach your worth to how easy you make life for someone else, you give away your inner peace. Buddhism reminds us of the profound practice of non-attachment. This does not mean you stop caring for others. It means you stop clinging to the desperate need for them to always approve of you. Imagine a quiet lake reflecting the moon on a dark night. When the air is still, the reflection is perfect and round. But the moment the wind blows, the water ripples, and the image of the moon becomes distorted. If you spend your entire life standing in the water, desperately trying to smooth the ripples with your bare hands, just to keep the reflection perfect, you will never know a moment of rest. You will be exhausted, fighting the wind and the natural movement of the water. The moon above does not care about the ripples. It simply continues to shine. Think about your own life. How much of your daily energy is spent trying to smooth the water? Think about how you carefully rewrite a simple text message 3 times so you do not sound too demanding. Think about how you over-explain your entirely reasonable decisions so no one gets the wrong idea. Think about the times you have stayed quiet when someone spoke down to you simply because you did not want to be the one who caused a scene. You are fighting the wind. You are exhausting yourself trying to control a reflection. Ask yourself, what are you truly losing if someone decides you are difficult? Are you losing a genuine, loving connection? Or are you simply losing an audience that only appreciated you when you were invisible? What if being called difficult is just what happens when you finally stop being easily controlled? Pause. Breathe. The next time you feel the panic of being misunderstood, do not rush to fix it. Let the feeling rise. Do your part. Speak your truth with quiet dignity. Then release the outcome. You do not have to explain yourself into exhaustion. You do not have to smooth the water, because peace is not the result of being liked by everyone. It is the result of no longer abandoning yourself. But what happens to all those words, feelings, and boundaries you have swallowed for years? They do not just fade away, and this is where the next truth begins. 5. The unseen weight of swallowed words. What if the silence you think is protecting you is actually slowly breaking you from the inside out? Here is a profound illusion we often fall for. We tell ourselves that keeping quiet is harmless. We convince ourselves that we are being strong. We think, it is not a big deal, or I will just let it go this time. So we swallow our frustration when someone dismisses our effort. We bite our tongues when a friend makes a careless, hurtful remark. We smile through the discomfort of being ignored in a conversation, believing that if we do not speak the words, they will simply disappear. But they do not. Unspoken words do not vanish into the air. They sink deep into the body. They turn into a heavy, quiet resentment. They manifest as a tight chest, a tired spirit, or a sudden, overwhelming flash of anger over something completely unrelated. We think we are burying our feelings, but we are actually planting them. Buddhist wisdom teaches us about the nature of suppressed energy and the heavy burden of denial. In Buddhist thought, ignoring our own truth is a form of resistance against reality. True mindfulness is not just about observing the beautiful and peaceful things, it is about observing our own pain without looking away. When we consistently bury our genuine feelings to maintain a shallow, fragile harmony with others, we create a deep internal dissonance. Buddhism reminds us that whatever we refuse to acknowledge does not leave us. It stays, it hardens, and it becomes the very suffering we were desperately trying to avoid. Imagine a small, quiet room inside your heart. Every time you swallow a word you needed to say, every time you hide a true feeling to keep the peace, you place a heavy stone in that room. At first, a few stones do not matter. There is plenty of space. You can easily walk around them, but over months and years, you keep adding stones. You add a stone for every time you said yes when you meant no. You add a stone for every unfair criticism you absorbed in silence. Soon, the floor is covered. Then, the stones pile up to the windows, blocking out the light. Eventually, the room is so full of unexpressed truth that there is no air left to breathe and the door can no longer open. You look around and wonder why you feel so exhausted, so trapped, so utterly heavy. It is not because the world is crushing you. It is because you are carrying the weight of 1,000 unspoken stones. Think about your own life. Think about the sudden, unexplained exhaustion you feel after spending just 1 hour with someone who constantly steps over your unstated limits. Think about the resentment that quietly builds when you do everything for everyone else, and no one notices you are running on empty. You are silently begging them to see the weight you are carrying, but you refuse to speak it aloud. We carry this immense, invisible burden every single day, trying to look perfectly light and agreeable on the outside. Ask yourself, what are you carrying right now that you were never meant to hold? How many stones in your room belong to conversations you were too afraid to have? Pause, breathe. Notice the physical weight in your shoulders and your chest right now. You do not have to have all those difficult conversations today, but you must begin by acknowledging the stones. Look at them. Admit that they are heavy. Stop pretending they do not exist. Because true peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the absence of self-betrayal. You cannot be light if you are holding on to everything you refuse to say. But letting go of that weight requires us to redefine what it means to care for others. And this is where the next truth begins. 6. Boundaries as a true act of compassion. What if saying no to someone is the most loving thing you can do for both of you? Here is a truth we often misunderstand. We view boundaries as walls. We think of them as harsh, aggressive barriers designed to keep people out and push the world away. When we think of setting a boundary, we imagine a fight. We imagine anger, disappointment, and fractured relationships. Because we see boundaries this way, we avoid them entirely. We let people walk over us, exhaust us, and drain our time, all while telling ourselves we are being kind, open, and giving. We believe that limitless availability equals love, but love without limits soon turns into resentment, and a relationship built on endless sacrifice eventually collapses under its own weight. Buddhist wisdom teaches a profound perspective on boundaries. In Buddhist thought, boundaries are not weapons, they are the very foundation of mindful compassion. True compassion, known as karuna, requires clarity and truth. It cannot exist where there is unspoken resentment or hidden exhaustion. When you do not set limits, you are enabling behavior that harms both you and the other person. You are participating in an illusion. Buddhism reminds us that we cannot genuinely give to others if our own well is entirely dry. Setting a gentle, firm boundary is an act of deep respect. Respect for your own energy, and respect for the other person's ability to handle the truth. Imagine a beautiful historic home with an open front door. You love this home, and you want people to visit. But because you never set a boundary, anyone can walk in at any time. They track mud onto your floors. They rearrange your furniture. They sleep in your bed and eat all your food. You smile tightly, trying to be a gracious host, but inside you are furious and exhausted. You begin to hate the visitors. You begin to hate the house. Eventually, you lock the door forever and refuse to let anyone in. But a boundary is not locking the door forever, and it is not leaving it wide open. A boundary is simply putting up a fence with a gate. It says, "You are welcome here, but you must wipe your feet, and you must leave when it gets dark." Think about your own life. Think about the person who constantly calls you just to complain, draining your energy before you have even started your day. Think about the family member who assumes you will always cancel your plans to help them with their crisis. When you finally say, "I only have 5 minutes to talk," or "I cannot help this weekend," you are not being cruel. You are building the gate. You are ensuring that when you do show up for them, you are showing up with genuine care, rather than quiet, exhausted anger. Ask yourself, where in your life are you leaving the front door wide open while quietly hating the mud on your floors? Are you truly being kind by letting them in? Or are you just avoiding the brief discomfort of asking them to wipe their feet? Pause, breathe. The next time you need to set a limit, do not apologize for it. State it simply. You do not need a 5-minute explanation or an excuse. "I cannot do that. Right now" is a complete sentence. Let the boundary stand softly but firmly, because a relationship without boundaries is just a quiet countdown to resentment. To truly love others, you must first have the courage to protect the space where that love lives. But to do this, you must be willing to face something very difficult. And this is where the next truth begins. What if you could let someone be disappointed in you and simply do nothing to fix it? Here is a deeply uncomfortable truth. When we finally start speaking up and drawing lines, people will not always cheer for us. In fact, the people who benefited most from your silence will often be the most upset by your voice. They will sigh, they will pull away, they will look at you with quiet judgment. And for someone who has spent a lifetime trying to keep the peace, someone else's disappointment feels like a physical emergency. We immediately want to backtrack. We want to over-explain, to apologize, to soften the blow, to erase the boundary we just bravely drew. We falsely believe that if someone is upset with our decision, we must have done something terrible. Buddhist wisdom teaches a profound practice of remaining steady in the face of changing conditions. In Buddhist thought, you are responsible for your actions and the purity of your intentions, but you are never the master of another person's emotional state. Their disappointment belongs entirely to them. When you constantly rush to fix their feelings, you are not actually acting out of pure love. You are acting out of a desperate need to feel comfortable again. Buddhism reminds us that we must learn to sit quietly in the discomfort of being misunderstood. We must allow others to have their own reactions without reaching out to absorb their karma or their pain into our own hearts. Imagine you are standing safely inside a strong, warm house, looking out a large glass window. Suddenly, dark clouds roll in, and a heavy, cold rain begins to fall. You can see the wind whipping the trees. You can hear the rain hitting the glass. But what do? You do not run outside into the freezing storm, waving your arms, frantically trying to stop the rain from falling. You do not try to catch every drop of water before it hits the ground. You simply stand by the window. You watch the storm. You let it rain, knowing that eventually the weather will run out of energy and pass. Another person's disappointment is exactly like that storm. It is weather outside your window. You can observe it. You can even have deep compassion for it. But you do not have to open the door and let the freezing rain soak you to the bone. Think about your own life. Think about the moment you tell a demanding colleague you cannot take on their project and they give you a cold, silent stare. Think about telling a parent that you cannot attend a stressful gathering and hearing that heavy, familiar sigh of judgment on the other end of the phone. Your immediate instinct is to rush outside into the storm, to comfort them, to change your mind, just to make the heavy sigh stop. But when you do that, you abandon your warm house. You soak yourself in their rain. Ask yourself, why do you feel it is your ultimate job to manage the emotional weather of everyone around you? What would happen if you simply let them be upset and trusted that they are strong enough to survive their own temporary disappointment? Pause. Breathe. The next time you say no and the other person reacts poorly, do not say another word. Do not fill the awkward silence with nervous apologies. Just observe the tension. Let it hang in the air. Let the rain fall against the glass. You will be amazed to discover that their disappointment cannot actually break you, because your peace cannot rely on everyone around you being constantly thrilled with your choices. True freedom begins the moment you realize you can survive being the villain in someone else's temporary story. And this is where the final truth begins. 8. Reclaiming your voice and returning to true peace. What if the peace you have been searching for your entire life was never meant to be found in the approval of others? We began this journey by looking at the quiet, heavy exhaustion that comes from swallowing your true feelings just to keep the room calm. We looked at the sheer terror of being called difficult, the crushing weight of unspoken words, and the deeply ingrained habit of using guilt as a false moral compass. For years, you have built dams to hold back your own river. You have twisted your branches to hide your shadow. You have filled the quiet room of your heart with heavy stones of unexpressed truth, all in the desperate hope of being a good person. But as you now know, a peace that requires your permanent silence is not peace at all. It is merely a gentle prison. Buddhist wisdom brings us back to the ultimate truth of our existence. Nothing external can ever be the source of your true liberation. In Buddhist thought, the end of suffering begins the moment we stop clinging to illusions. And the greatest illusion you must release is the belief that your worth is measured by your endless compliance. When you finally drop the heavy burden of managing everyone else's emotions, you do not become a cold or selfish person. You become deeply, authentically present. You reclaim the energy that was once scattered in 1,000 different directions, constantly scanning the room for signs of disapproval. And when you return that energy to your own center, you finally discover what true inner harmony feels like. Imagine that quiet room inside your heart once again. But this time, you are no longer bringing in new stones. Instead, you walk to the door, turn the handle, and gently pull it open. The sunlight streams in. One by one, you begin to pick up the heavy stones of resentment, fear, and people-pleasing, and you carry them outside. You set them down, you let them go. The room does not empty all at once. It takes time. But with every single stone you remove, the air becomes lighter. The space becomes wider. For the first time in a very long time, you can finally breathe deeply. Think about the life waiting for you when you stop being afraid of your own voice. Think about the profound relief of simply saying what you mean, without spending hours agonizing over how it will be received. Think about the quiet dignity of standing in your own truth, letting the storm of other people's disappointment pass by the window without ever letting it soak you. You are no longer living as an anxious reaction to the world around you. You are living as yourself. Ask yourself, are you ready to let the rusted compass go? Are you ready to stop letting fear write the rules of your life? Pause. Breathe. The next time you are asked to shrink, to silence yourself, or to quietly carry a weight that does not belong to you, remember the space you are creating inside your heart. You are allowed to have boundaries. You are allowed to be inconvenient. You are allowed to be entirely, imperfectly human. If these lessons touched your heart, share this video with someone who may need a little more peace today. You are allowed to take up space.